Do you want to know a little of what it's like inside the bold blueprint? Today, my guest and I walk through the courageous faith method and how to practically and simply choose faith over fear. We use this method all throughout the bold blueprint. We are so prone to fear, but if we choose faith, we can actually reprogram our neuron pathways in our brain to choose faith more naturally and regularly. See, my guest today struggles with stress and anxiety too. She has put tools into place to live boldly instead. Amy is a lover of sunshine, coffee, and deep conversations. She is passionate about creating spaces where people feel safe to talk about their mental wellness and health. She is a wife and mom of 3 who believes in the value of taking good care of herself so she can care for those she loves. She is host of the Living Table podcast and can often be found out in nature on a walk or enjoying a meal with her family around her table in the PNW. That's Pacific Northwest. I didn't know that. So make sure you listen to the end of our conversation to hear how she chooses faith over fear, because the bold blueprint is going on secret sale. Yes, we use this method in the bold blueprint, and the bold blueprint is going on a ginormous secret sale. The sale is so big, that is why it's a secret. There are bonuses and a discount so large that I actually have it a secret so you can check it out on your own and then decide. So go to www.theshanwright.com/secret sale. So my birthday is next week, and I want to gift you this blueprint that has changed my life from stress, living on the hot mess express and hamster wheel of motherhood, to living with peace and calm and patience and in my God-given kingdom identity, which, my friend, is the only way to truly live this one life. So if you don't know your identity, that's reason number 1. You've got to join us in the Bold Blueprint. If you do know your identity, but you still struggle with stress that weighs you down, or you lose your cool with your kids too often, or you aren't sure how to manage all of work and kids and marriage and your social life, or if you just feel on edge and mom guilt shows up too much, or if you're stressed out, touched out, or mommed out, this is for you. The Bold Blueprint is what God gave me to share with you. I am so confident in that. It's a 6-month group coaching program that will transform your life to peaceful, purpose-driven abundance. Mama friend, we only get this one life. Go right now to www.theshanwright, right with a W, .com/secret sale. And then I'll see you on the inside. Now enjoy this conversation with my friend, Amy McVay. Hey mama, are you overwhelmed by your full, blessed life? Do you feel stuck in the messy, mundane middle? Then I'm so glad you're here to take a breath. Hey, I'm Shan Wright, RN, holistic wellness coach, and a mom to 4 that went from perfectionism, control, and lots of anxiety to intentionally living through simple solutions and so much peace. If you are done with the stressed out life, hot mess express type of motherhood, then heat up that coffee again and let's live holistically well in the middle. Let's go. Okay, I am so excited to share another testimony on the show today. This testimony I know is going to relate to you in some way. I'm just so confident of that. And I pray it gives you hope in taking your own steps on your healing journey, and also encourages you to take bold steps in your healing. I have met this friend through a coaching program that we're in together, and she's been such a blessing to me, and I know this is going to bless you. So, Amy McVay, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Shan. So good to be here today.
Okay, so first, I want the listeners to get to know you a little bit. So please share just a bit about your family, and because this is about managing our stress, two things that are making your life less stressful right now.
Okay, great question. I am married. I'm coming up on 24 years this summer. Married to my husband. We have three children on earth, three in heaven.
Mhm.
And my children are widely spaced. So I have a 22-year-old about to graduate college. I have a 17-year-old about to graduate high school, and then a 7-year-old little boy. So two girls and a boy. Love family life. It is so full, as you can imagine, with that age span. And
Yeah.
it got somebody everywhere, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, your question about two things that are making life less stressful. I love that question. And one would be advocating for myself, for my wants and needs. And specifically, I just spent the past week at the beach. So I was in Jacksonville at Jacksonville Beach, Florida, and I love the beach. I love the sunshine, and I'm a beachcomber, so I love looking for shells. And yeah, that would be one thing I would say is just advocating for my needs. And also, I would say right now and for a good while now is my morning routine.
Yeah. What does that consist of?
That consists of making my coffee in the morning, stepping outside no matter how cold it is, to just breathe in the fresh air. And then I spend some time in stillness with the Lord and with my journal and just pray and wait and listen. And it's really the time that I talk to the Lord about my feelings. So just
Mhm.
bring whatever I'm feeling into that time. And it's such a powerful time and way to start my day that kind of gets me set up for the day
Hmm.
and for what's coming and prepares me. And so my morning routine is very grounding for me.
Yeah. Is it early?
Yes, preferably it is very early. And you know what I've noticed? I pay attention so much to my health and wellness and just different signs that my body gives me. And in the wintertime, it's different. I mean, I'm typically an earlier to bed, early to rise person, but I found that especially in the wintertime. It's like I'm going to bed early, and in turn, that's helping me rise early. And my goal is always to get up before my son because he loves to rise early too. But Mama needs that time. So, and I tend to kindly remind him that, if he gets up early too, it's like, okay, this is Mama's time. It is time for you to still be sleeping. So,
I'm curious, what time is that?
ideally, that's like 5 a.m.
Okay.
So I love to have an extended amount of. I'm a person that does not like to be rushed. Don't rush me to try to wake up. I like to take my time, and so yeah, if I have plenty of time, that's great. If I only have 15, 30 minutes, if it was a rough night or if I got to bed late, I just work on being okay with that. But
Yeah.
ideally, I like to have a good amount of time.
Yeah. I'm very similar. So, I mean, I've gone through seasons, right? I feel like we can adjust our morning routine for the season that we're in, but knowing that whatever routine you choose, it is setting up your day. It is really playing a huge part in your stress, in your mental wellness for the day. And so to be mindful of it and not just roll out of bed and hit that alarm and get dealing with the kids and all the to-dos. And so I've varied on the time. And because I used to go to the gym at 4:45 a.m. So I would get up at 4, go to the gym, and then I'd come home and have my time before the kids were awake. So it had to be early enough. I had to get to the gym early enough so that I had an extended amount of time. And then I was finding that I was having a hard time going to bed early enough for that 4 a.m. wake up call because, again, of the stages and ages that my kids are. I would have loved to go to bed early, but it was really hard with their activities and different things. So I was like, okay, well, if I can't get to bed before 10, then play it off of that. I really try to get in bed by 9:30 so that I can wake up at 5 and do the same thing you do. But I am going to add in, I love what you said, like opening the door and the fresh air, no matter how cold it is. It's nice when the sunlight's there too, because that's also helping your circadian rhythm. I'm
Well,
like, why am I
circadian, yeah.
circadian rhythm?
It's a tough
And
one. Yeah,
seeing the sunlight, but it's so dark usually that early, but it's nice sometimes in the summer. It does get bright early, but that fresh air, sunlight if you have it, and then going into my morning time, that would be amazing. So I'm gonna start doing that. That was a good tip.
definitely. I notice about my own wellness, I feel more well outside. No
Yes,
matter what, I feel more well outside. And so I
absolutely.
just adopted that into my morning routine. Again, we learn things as we go, we learn new tools, we learn things that work, things that don't work, and like you said, in different seasons. But I've learned that if I can start the day that way and just spend, even if it's just, like I said, a few moments to take some
Yeah.
deep breaths outside, it's going to make a difference in starting my day.
Yeah, and I really try. I'm going to do a whole episode on this. You just maybe reminded me because I really do try to help coaching clients and different moms in my space to think about their morning routine and try to get up earlier before their kids. But then I always get the pushback of, well, 6 a.m. is so early. I can't get up that early. And then the kids get up early and it's like, okay, we'll just move it up higher and earlier than them. And I get a lot of pushback. And I just think we have to try it and then even try to just make it that 10 minutes. And then you're going to love it so much. So you're like, okay, maybe I'll do 15 minutes and then 20. And then again, it goes right into the nighttime routine. Like that nighttime routine has to be kind of on point to have a really good sleep and then a really good morning
Right.
routine.
Right. And I want to say now, now that my son is 7, of course, I've got my older two as well. Like you said, this is seasonally and in different life stages and parenting stages, it's different. I feel like I'm in a sweet spot right now of how early I'm waking up and the time that I'm having. I have not always had that time.
Yeah.
There's been plenty of mornings where I'm barely getting out of bed when my kids are getting up. And like you said, it's like tasting it, it's experiencing it, and
Yeah.
then going, okay, I want more of this in my life. Okay, I show up in the world, even with my family and those around me, in a different way when I have that time. But I do want to say I have not always had that time, and it fluctuates.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I love that. Well, we're going to move on to hearing about your story. I would love for you to share your story as much or a little as you want to share, but I want it to show what struggles you've been through and how it's led you to where you are today. I know you're doing a lot of amazing things, and so you can share what you're doing and then just how the struggle and the challenge, the test that led to the testimony.
Thank you so much for asking that question. And I would love to share. And first and foremost, this is my first guest interview. So, Shan, you're the first show that I've been on. And I want to say that because of the growth in my life and how years ago I would never have imagined guesting on a podcast, sharing my story with who knows how many people, right?
Yeah.
And so mine is a story of really living in hiding, living unseen, living in silence for so many years and not quite knowing why until it was after the birth of our first daughter that I started to experience what I didn't even know at the time was anxiety, uncontrollable, thoughts, and it was really affecting my health in such a detrimental way. I had little to no quality of life. I was struggling at night, I was struggling during the day. I would wake up, again, still trying to wake up early in the morning. I am a morning person, but I would wake up and at that time, we were living in a small townhouse and my daughter would still be sleeping. And I would go to our little half bath with my Bible and just cry out to God. I'm like, I don't even know what this is, but please take this away from me. And no one has to know about this. That was kind of my conversation with God. Like, no one will have to know about this. I was just so miserable. And all I felt like I knew how to do, and again, I believe in God's word. I believe in the power of it. I believe in the power of prayer. But that was kind of all I knew what to do. And it felt like it wasn't working. It felt like nothing was changing. And again, like I said, I was begging with God that this could just be kept between us and I wouldn't have to talk to anybody else about it. I struggled pretty much silently. I mean, I was talking with my husband and a little bit with my mom at that time. And of course, everybody's like, is this postpartum? Like, what's going on? But it was a good, my daughter's first year of life that I was really suffering. My husband was working in the church at the time, and I did not hear anyone around me talking about this kind of suffering. So again, I just kept it inside. I would just put a smile on my face and act as if nothing was going on. And that was starting to be more and more debilitating. And so I remember my husband had actually been the first one to encourage me about counseling. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. No, I don't want to do that. And I fought him on it for a while. And he was always so kind to pray with me and read scripture over me, but it just was not going away. And I remember I've always been a very social person, always loved people. And when I began to have social anxiety, that was a big one for me. Like I'm really losing my ability to function all the way around. And so I remember reluctantly with tears streaming out of my face, I'm like, I'll go, I'll go. And that began the healing journey for me when I sought out counseling when I began to learn that I had a lot of false beliefs in my mind, there was hope. There was hope in renewing my mind, but also it wasn't just through prayer and scripture. It was through speaking out loud what was
Mm.
going on inside to other human beings. And I remember it really struck me, this Christian counselor that I was seeing at the time, a man who I greatly respect and will forever be grateful to God for, is he talked about his own experience with anxiety and how he still would experience times of anxiety and how, the tools that he had and used and what was helpful to him. And part of that was speaking his story out loud, with someone else that he trusted. So that really stuck with me. And then I remember God was just using different people and situations in my life it's like Holy Spirit was whispering, I will use this for my glory. I remember one of the scriptures that really stood out to me in that time was, my power is made perfect in your weakness. I mean, I was begging God to take it away. And he was saying, my power is made perfect in your weakness. My grace is sufficient. My grace is enough for this. And I still
Mhm.
wanted to fight him about it. Um, like, I get that, but please don't make me talk about this
Yeah.
to anyone. And here I am now doing nothing but talking about it to others. But that has been such a journey, Shan. Like, such a journey, has felt like a long road at times. I would kind of test it, little bits here and there of bringing up and sharing little parts of my story. And what I would notice is inevitably someone would say, "Me too. Oh my goodness, you struggle with that? I struggle with that." And so me being able to start putting words to it was helping other people to start putting words to what they were going through. And that's when I was like, okay, okay, okay. I admit, God, I could see that maybe you're doing something here, but still, this feels really painful. I still don't want it. I still don't want to be experiencing that. And so for me, it was steps of, like I said, reaching out and seeing a counselor who recommended seeing a doctor. I was really against taking medication, just from what, again, how I grew up, and I grew up in the church and nobody's talking about these things. And so I felt a lot of shame. And that is what continued to keep me silent and in hiding for so long,
Mhm.
just the shame and stigma of it all. And so I was walking that out, but very much having a hard time with the things that I needed to agree to, like to help me on that healing journey, right? So I did. I continue to seek counseling. I mean, I've learned so many incredible tools. I continue to renew my mind, but there was this piece of it of sharing my story with others that was a part of my healing. That was a part of my transformation. And I remember I used to live in fear of my feelings, and I had a
Mm.
lot of them. I had a lot of them. They tended to be really big. I found that I lived in fear of them for so long because I thought, where is this big feeling going to take me? And especially my anxiety led to depression. And originally I was diagnosed with anxiety and then depression. And fast forward about 10 years, and I am diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So there were things going on, there was chemistry going on in my body that initially was really misdiagnosed. And then again, being diagnosed with bipolar, that's something that I did not want. And I kind of, I guess I wrestle with God a lot, but wrestled with him about that. And again, he just was whispering, my power is made perfect in your weakness. My grace is sufficient for this. I've learned so much about myself in the process of, as much as I haven't wanted it, I've also been a student of it. And I think you can relate with
Hmm.
that because you
Yeah.
love to learn. And so anything that's happening within me, I love to learn about it as well. And so that all led me to a time in my life where I mentioned earlier that we have three babies in heaven because I went through three miscarriages, and it was an incredibly painful season of my life as I was waiting on God for something I felt like He promised me. And again, so many feelings surrounding that. And I thought I had already been through so much with my mental health, but going through that absolutely stopped me. Like, I felt like after that third miscarriage, I was like, again, my wrestling with God, I'm like, I'm done. I feel like I can't move forward. I don't want to move forward. This is incredibly painful. I don't understand why this is happening. But in that time, why I share about that time especially is when I was starting to learn more about like listening and hearing God's voice. And I remember that was a time that I would just pour out my heart in my journal to him and just sit because I felt like I couldn't do anything else. I felt like I could barely move. And just the way that he spoke into that time, and I was paying attention to his
Mm.
voice, it was the most healing words that I could ever possibly receive. That, again, were not coming from me, were not coming from anyone around me. It was God knowing me inside and out, and what I really needed for my healing. And so he allowed me to see that those three babies that, were alive for a time in my womb and went to be with him. It's like they were ushering me into God's presence. Like, Mom, it is the best here. Just,
No, that's so sweet.
just yeah, that he was giving me vision for, they were bringing me to him for like another level of healing that I really
Yeah.
needed at that part in my journey. And so so I encountered God's love for me in such amazing ways. And I remember for years I was like holding on to the healing with clenched fists. Like, I just want the healing. I
Yeah.
just want the healing. And I felt like that's what I was hearing from my church community, that, just pray, have faith, you'll be healed. And I was like, that's what I want. I want that testimony. I'm healed. I don't have anxiety, depression, bipolar anymore, moving on with my life. And that's not my story.
Yeah.
And God, all the while, has been so faithful and gentle and kind to show me that, beloved, I have a different story for you. And there are others that have suffered and are suffering these things that need to hear your story, right? Of how God has been with me. I walk very closely with him. I cannot do this. Like I said, after the miscarriages, I was like, I'm done. I'm not moving forward. If I move forward, it's because you are moving me forward, period. And again, look at that attitude. Like, and God can handle it, right? He can handle our truth. And that's what I kept needing to see is that bring the truth into the light. Whatever it is that I'm feeling, and sometimes whatever it is that I'm thinking, just bring that into the light and with him and allow him to speak into it. So he taught me how to no longer be afraid of my emotions, no matter how big they were, because I could bring them to him. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm feeling really sad today, God. And so it's kind of like I imagine almost like this table of like me and Jesus are sitting at the table, then I'm bringing sadness. I'm like, okay, sadness is here, and Jesus isn't phased. Yeah, I'm very well acquainted with sadness and grief, and
Mm-hmm.
I just realized, whoa, I don't have to be afraid. Actually, my emotions are bringing me to Him for
Yeah.
something. They're showing me something. They're showing me more of myself, more of
Mm-hmm.
God, more
Mm-hmm.
about those around me, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so again, just through my mental health journey, and through the painful loss of miscarriage, I came face to face with Jesus in those times. Some of the darkest times in my life is where I met him.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met him, I like I again process. I'm human, but it's like I at some point I surrendered. I let go of wanting the healing so bad because I met the healer and I'm like, I want you. Okay, I just want to spend time with you, and somehow you're going to make a way for me to move forward. So,
Mm. Yeah, Amy, that's so beautiful. So beautiful. And I have been jotting down so many little notes because I love your story and I love what God's doing in you. We have a lot of similarities in our stories. And going back to the whole, like you saying, God said, speak it out. And he called me a spokesperson. I was like, oh, yeah, God, we're all spokesperson for you. Like, that's the Christian life. And he's like, no, it's like Moses. Like, I'm calling you to speak. And I'm like, what? It's like the same thing. I was like so reluctant. I was like, no, about what? About all that I've been doing in your life. And for me, a lot of it was, again, realizing and reflecting and being aware. And you brought that up with asking questions. I feel very strongly that we have to be more curious of what's going on inside of our bodies. Like you were saying, ask questions. And yes, ask questions, figure it out, be curious. Like if you have this feeling, ask yourself why that came. Don't shame and say, feeling go away, thought go away. Ask why. Why is it there? And start to dig. And I always say feelings are messengers, and they are. Like they're telling you something. You don't have to be afraid of them. That's fear. God and Satan wants that. He wants us to run from these feelings and pour ourselves in all kind of coping mechanisms for them. But no, we're supposed to ask, hey, God, what's this feeling saying? Tell me. and that,
right.
and you said about the journaling, and I call that two-way journaling. And I learned to do that a couple years ago. And it was so healing for me too. Like I teach that in my course, The Bold Blueprint, because it was so pivotal in my healing journey to literally be talking to God in a journal form where these thoughts are not from you. It's Holy Spirit literally speaking through your pen, and it's not hard, but you have to get your logical brain out of the way and really be in tune with God, and you feel his presence and you hear from him, and it's amazing. And he's the healer. So when you meet him like that, you're going to be healed. And then I was going to say, this is the whole reason I brought you on, was because of vulnerability and authenticity. And God telling you, yeah, Amy, you're going through this, but I want you to speak it out. That's saying, I want you to be vulnerable. I want you to be authentically you. And it's going to take a lot of courage. And so embracing that authenticity of who you are and your voice and finding your voice has been huge for you. How has that led into you helping others do that?
Yeah, I again as someone who lived in silence and lived in that fear for so long of actually being seen, of actually opening my mouth and speaking and sharing my true thoughts and feelings. I have been on this journey and it still continues, but as I started to see little bits that I would share my story, I started a blog way back when, and that was a little bit of me opening up and starting to share. And I remember somebody, like one of my first comments that somebody left, that they related so much, thank you so much for sharing. And again, I'm like, okay, there's something to this. Something would always happen when I would open my mouth and share my story. And so I just kept venturing out little by little. And whether it was a mom waiting for pickup at the school, and I would just, God gave me eyes to see. He's given me eyes to see and ears to hear those around me that are suffering, that are struggling in some way. And not that I always know what that is, but sometimes there's just certain things that I would see as someone who suffers with mental health challenges. There's certain things that I would observe. And so I remember just starting little conversations, again, sharing little bits of my story and other women opening up to me. As I began to do that, I'm such a connector too. I cannot help it. I thought, if this woman could hear this woman's story,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, because there's certain lived experience I don't have, but they would share similar lived experience. And if I could get them together so that they could hear each other's story. And so that began like little coffee chats, I would have women kind of come together, and then there was about, I think about four of us, and I felt it, Shan. I felt God calling me to be courageous. And again, that can be a still small voice. It's not like this megaphone, like, Amy, this is what I want you to do. It's just something that we sense within our spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of how God's moving. And I'm a hospitality girl. Oh my goodness. I love the table. I love gathering around the table. I'm not so much the perfect space, having everything perfect. I am more I just want to gather people together so we can hear each other's stories. Like that's the feast for me. But I do love the table. And so I remember inviting these women or asking them, hey, would you want to come to my house for dinner? And I'm going to invite these other people, and like resounding, yes, 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 yes. I'm like, okay,
Wow.
that hardly happens because you know how planning things in this
Yeah.
day and age is real hard. And so everybody showed up, everybody came to the table. Again, the feast was, we all had similar lived experience. So, and this wasn't just hey, how are you? How are your kids doing? I led with that vulnerability because God was asking me to.
Yeah.
So I would start the conversation with vulnerability, something I was struggling with, something that was hard in my life. And then it would just be like domino effect where the next person's sharing, the next person's sharing, and we are just, everybody's sharing the burden of their life. So everyone was sharing the broken pieces of their lives, and we were all getting fed by it in such a way of, what I realized, it was such a missing piece to my healing, is having other people in my life with similar lived experience that I could talk to, that I could share this with. And other women were experiencing it too. And I remember a friend of mine that was at the table afterwards, she was like, I have another friend who could really use this. Can I invite her next time? And so I asked everybody else, just, out of thoughtfulness, would you be okay if so and so invites their friend? And then this woman came to the table and just fit right in. And again, just so many shared stories and shared experiences, but nobody felt like they had to preface anything. Nobody felt like they really had to go into explanation. There was just understanding.
Yeah.
And so, again, that came from God working that vulnerability in me, giving me courage to open my mouth and share my story, and then just listen as maybe for the first time, had never had anybody to share this with. And I'm just sitting there in complete awe and wonder of what God is doing. And so that has just continued. that has evolved over the years. As much as I wanted it to look linear and everybody's going to come over to my house once a month and we're going to do this. I mean, I wanted to kind of hold on to it and make it look a certain way. But again, God in his grace has just shown me this is not linear, dear. It's not going to look like how you want it to look. It's going to look really messy. Recovery looks messy. And that's how I live my life in recovery of every day, I'm choosing this path of vulnerability, of living vulnerable, of choosing to take care of my wellness in a way that I'm in the driver's seat of my life and my emotions aren't taking over, right?
Mhm.
I'm living seen, I'm living known. And when we allow ourselves to be seen, when we allow ourselves to be known, and especially those broken places that sometimes we don't want anyone to see, but when we allow ourselves to be seen, then we allow ourselves to receive love and be loved in those places. And that's where transformation happens.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all so good. So you said, you decide, you choose. And one thing that I try to talk about a lot here on the podcast is how we get to choose our thoughts and we can change our thoughts and we can take control of our thoughts. And so I would love to walk through an old Amy scenario, like where you let negative, intrusive, anxious thoughts kind of rule the day and what that looked like in your life. And then how you've changed your thoughts and taken courageous faith, because you have over and over every day, right? And you choose that. And then what that looks like. Okay. So we're going to do this little exercise.
Okay.
Because I think this is so powerful and I walk through this a lot with my clients. We do it in the Bold Blueprint and it's really the first thing. Your thoughts are the first thing. And so we can get to the root, then we can change our actions. So think back to those days when you were anxious, depressed, kind of letting those thoughts kind of rule the day. What was a common thought for you?
Okay, there were so many, so I'm trying to just pick one. A common thought for me is never being enough, never
Yeah.
being good enough. I'm not a good enough wife. I'm not a good enough mom. I'm not a good enough friend. And I was definitely dealing with a lot of perfectionism back
Hmm.
then, all or nothing kind of
Yeah.
thinking. And so I would be hearing that a lot. Not only was I living in that shame, but there was a lot of condemnation coming too.
Yeah.
Thoughts of, oh my goodness, you're such a horrible, awful mom. There was that negative self-talk too, which I don't
Hmm.
live with anymore. But I remember again, that was coming at me in a way to keep me
Yeah.
isolated, keep me from reaching out for community and having relationships, real,
Yeah.
authentic relationships, right?
I think that's a good point because when we're in that situation, we almost feel like, well, I'm not choosing this thought. It's coming at me. It's intrusive. And that's why it's called an intrusive thought. But we get to say no. We get to change it. And that's what you've done. Okay. So, not enough. Very common lie. I love it. I love that you chose that one. Now, when you thought that, what do you remember the feelings that followed?
Shame, definitely. And back then in those days, I wouldn't have been able to name that. I
Right.
name that now because I've learned what that looks like and how shame has a certain look, a certain
Yeah.
sound, and it's usually drawing me away from connection
Isolation.
instead of leading me to connection. So shame is definitely one of them. And just an overall feeling of, and again, this can come from shame too, is that there's something wrong with me.
Hmm.
Like everybody else, I'm looking around at what I think appears that everybody else has it together. Everybody else can do the things that I'm just apparently not good at, right? And so just an overall bad feeling
Yeah.
about myself.
So you think you're not enough. You feel the shame that you're bad and sad and all that. And what did you say a lot of things, maybe just to your spouse or to your kids? Did words come out of your mouth of even voicing the critical things that you hear in your head about yourself to them, maybe? Because that letting that perfectionism kind of spread and, why didn't you clean up that mess? Like you're so messy, like saying negative, bad things to others. Did that happen or what did you say?
I think it definitely was playing out as anxiety. I would just be very anxious about,
Mm,
anytime somebody was going to come over. I
yeah.
mean, don't just suddenly drop by. I'm so not ready for that. I need to have time to prepare the space, to have
Yes.
everything, just right, even though that was not realistic as a
Yeah.
mom of a little child. And so I think there would be times that I would lash out, but mostly because I think I was holding so much in.
Mm-hmm.
I was really just holding this in, not talking about it. So sometimes then there would be these outbursts, right?
Yeah.
Of I'm impatient,
Yeah.
I'm stressed, I'm, acting out in this way. It's not my daughter's fault. It's not my husband's fault. I've got this stuff going on inside that I just don't know how to talk about.
Yeah. So then you would act in maybe anxiously rushing around cleaning the house or maybe just being hurried and urgent. And what other actions would resolve from those thoughts and feelings?
Also, immobilization. It would
Mm-hmm.
just immobilize me. I mean, it's like I'm stuck, I'm frozen,
Mm,
and
yeah.
again, just leading to that isolation. I'm not reaching out to talk to someone about it. I'm just keeping it all inside, which again is continuing to immobilize me and which is just perpetuating the cycle of these
Yes.
thoughts. See,
Yes.
that's what's really true about you, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's really good. So, and you've shared already in your testimony, but you've shared some courageous thoughts that you took on, but you no longer believe that you're not enough. I know that. I know you have rewired that thought pattern, that neuron pathway, and you believe otherwise. So, what is a courageous thought that you have chosen to take instead? It's taken faith and it's taken courage. What is another thought that you have instead?
learning how to soak in and embody like God is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have to be enough because he's enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as I can recognize that thought, because it's not that they don't still come, it doesn't
Right.
come in the same way, but as we walk, as we journey on, there's going to be new steps of courage to take.
Mm-hmm.
And so that thought of I'm not enough is in some way it might look and sound different, but it's still gonna kind of come up. And so when, like I said, with my emotions and learning how to not be afraid of them anymore and not allow the enemy to use them against me, as soon as I am cognizant of that, I'm turning to the Lord.
Yeah.
Here's this thought, you know, there's a reason why it's there, and just having conversation with him, sitting with it with him instead of taking that on and wearing it like it's who I am.
Perfect. Yes. So you change the thought to God is enough, and then your feelings that helps you feel hope and it takes away the shame. His grace covers all shame, cover his mercy, and then it results in saying words like even out loud, saying that your grace is sufficient for me, speaking truth out loud, even if you can't think of your own like thought or words of your own, take scripture, use that. Absolutely. And then that results in calmer actions, right? Is that the progression that you saw?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And I did find, even if it's just one other person, like my husband has been a rock for me as well, someone who I could take things to, I could take thoughts to when I felt like I couldn't find the truth myself. And sometimes he would say, what is truth? Just
Yeah.
something as simple as that.
So simple.
And sometimes I would be so emotional and I would be like, I don't know what truth is.
Yeah.
Just tell me what the truth is. And so either he would share, we would find it together. So it does help to have those people, even if it's just one person,
Mm-hmm.
right? A
Mm-hmm.
friend, a spouse, whoever that may be, to speak that out to and
Absolutely.
And that would result in peace.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, Amy. Yes. Thank you for saying that and pointing that out. Community, accountability, it's so important. And that's brings us full circle to being vulnerable. You have to share what you're feeling with someone else. And it could just be one person, but just with someone else. And if you choose the wrong person or if they don't really receive it, try again. Don't just say, I tried once and I'm not sharing ever again. Don't do that either.
That's right. Again, that is a process. That's a process. And I would love to say that it looks so beautiful and not messy, but it can be a messy process. And yes, we can get hurt
Yeah.
in the process of that, but it is worth it. And you could be the person that helps that other person to
Yeah.
realize that they can open up and share something.
Absolutely. So, okay, I love that. We could talk for a long time, but we want to honor your time. So, where can listeners get in touch with you? Because you have your own
Oh,
show.
thank you so much. Yes, I have my own podcast now. It's called Living Table, a
Hmm.
safe space to talk about our mental health and wellness. And so that is me taking this vulnerability, and speaking it out through a podcast, also having guests on the show who can share their stories too. Because for years I was living behind like this wall of shame. But as we each come and as we like take down those walls of shame, they turn into these tables of connection. It's like a
Yeah.
living table that we can have between one another and where people can feel safe to share. And so, Living Table podcast, you can find that on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to the podcast. And I would love for you to come and join me at the table.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for having that space for women to come. And it has been so fun having you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Shan. I love what you do as well. And I'm a big fan of the podcast of Holistic Moms. And so thank you for what you do. And thank you for giving me this space and inviting me on the show today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Hey, Wellness Warrior. I pray that blessed you. And if so, it would bless me big if you would write a 5-star review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Not only would this make me super happy, but it will allow for others to find this show too. Also, I love to chat over on Instagram, so make sure to take a screenshot, share to your Instagram stories, and tag me at @TheShanWright so I can see it and we can keep chatting and bring other moms to chat with us. Until we get to chat again, mama friend, may the Lord's face shine upon you and give you peace.